Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com and celebrity spokesmodel for the ClassicsToday.com merchandise shop, where you can get fabulous stuff, swag, lots of swag. We've got mugs and water bottles and hats and sweatshirts, all kinds of cool stuff. Go have a look on the homepage of ClassicsToday.com or the link below this very video. Okay, infomercial is over. Now I have to tell you a story. When I was a kid growing up in Milford, Connecticut, we used to go to the symphony in New Haven. You could see the New Haven Symphony, or you could see the Yale Symphony, or you could see visiting orchestras sometimes, which was really fun. I vividly remember at one point the Israel Philharmonic with Zubin Mehta came to conduct, and they did Brahms' First Symphony, and they also did a piece, I'll never forget it, it was by an Israeli composer. It was called In Eis Memoriam. It was dedicated to the memory of lots of people who died in something. It could have been the Holocaust or the Six-Day War or something Israeli. I don't know. It was about death. And it had a thunder sheet. And as a young kid who was soon to become a percussionist, I just was dying to see what that thing was hanging up in the back. And it turned out that you rattle it and it makes a thunder sound, theoretically. It's not terribly thunderous. I was a little disappointed with the thunder sheet, but what the piece did have was a siren. And this siren went off at the climax of the piece. And like a bunch of people got up and ran away. They just ran out. They thought that they were getting bombed by terrorists or something. I mean, it was the Israel Philharmonic after all, and this was in the 1970s, and tensions were running high in the Middle East. I kind of got it, but it was extremely amusing. Anyway, Woolsey Hall is a fabulous, fabulous concert hall. It really is. It has one of the greatest American concert organs, a symphonic organ in the world, which is a glorious instrument to listen to. And it has old wooden chairs that used to creak like a son of a bitch whenever you moved in them. I mean, on another occasion, I was there with my father, and they were doing Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony, and they were doing the Largo, the slow movement, which is unbelievably soft and still, and the harp is going pling, 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 pling. And my father got a cough, and he starts going, in the middle of it, and everyone turns around. We were in the balcony. He was very embarrassed. I was mortified, so he got up from his chair, and it went, and he started to walk out on the bare wooden floor, and it went until he closed the door, which was one of those old heavy wooden doors that went bang. Oh, it was fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. From these memories do we become music critics, right? All of us. Anyway, that's not the point. None of this is relevant. It's just I'm sunk in nostalgia, thinking of fabulous Woolsey Hall, which was on the other side. The building is sort of like an L-shaped, and on the other side is the Yale Commons, which is where everybody eats, which is just an enormous, barbaric-looking, sort of banquet hall with high chandeliers. It's just so cool. All that neo-Gothic architecture. It's just a wonderful place. It was a great place to grow up. Anyway, in addition to having fantastic acoustics, Woolsey Hall had the typical American concert hall decor, a basically unadorned interior with, a blue sort of ceiling and plaster relief around the edges, into which were carved the names of the great composers, the people at whose temple we had come to worship. Because that's really what it is. It was a form of secular worship, the world of classical music. Later, I would find that repulsive and revolting. But as a kid, I was just awed by the whole thing. And what were those names? They were Bach and Handel and Mozart and Beethoven and Mendelssohn and MacDowell. MacDowell? Yes, MacDowell. And I remember I'd heard of all the other ones, and I looked up and I said, who the hell is MacDowell? Why is he up there? Well, now we come to the point. It turns out that Edward MacDowell was considered, at the turn of the 20th century, the greatest living American composer, even though there were like a dozen others who were better, or at least more prolific or more interesting. I mean, shocking as it may seem. And he got his name plastered on quite a few concert halls, just like, a celebrity gets their name carved into the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So MacDowell was up there. And because he was up there, he's still up there, even though no one particularly cares about the music of Edward MacDowell. So I am here today to make a special plea for at least some of the music of Edward MacDowell, and in particular, this lovely, charming Naxos disc of orchestral music, his 2 orchestral suites, and his tone poem, Hamlet and Ophelia, which is really nothing special, but that's okay. You see, MacDowell was famous because he went to Germany and he studied with Raff and was a pupil of Liszt. So his pedigree was just, his pedigree was just pedigricious. It was unbelievable. It was stupendous. It really, really was. And as a result of that, he was a piano virtuoso, really a miniaturist. A salon music composer. He wrote fluff. He really did. He was a fluffy composer. His major orchestral works are these 2 suites and the 2 piano concertos. And that's basically about as much as he did in the orchestral realm. There are a couple tone poems, one of which is Hamlet and Ophelia. And his dates were 1860, the same year Mahler was born, which tells you, relatively speaking, just how uninteresting he later seemed to be. And he died 2 or 3 years before Mahler did, I think 1908. Yes, he died in 1908 in a very interesting way. He was run over by a horse-drawn carriage, and he sustained severe brain damage, and as a result of that, he just wasted away and died, which was quite sad. He was an avowed, dedicated, let's call it that way, anti-nationalist. He did not believe when Dvorak said that the future of American music lie in Native American and African American melodies and, the songs of the people. Oh my God, poor old MacDowell was horrified, absolutely horrified, because he believed in the traditional virtues of Victorian German music, which, as one critic mentioned, was music that was completely free of the frenzies of sex. As if that's a good thing. But they said that. I think it's actually in the notes here, but it's such a juicy quotation. How could you not mention that? And his music is not entirely free, by the way, of the frenzies of sex. Thank God there's a little frenzy in it here and there. Not a lot, but, a soupçon of frenzy, maybe a smidge of sex. And the fact of the matter is, he was a solid craftsman who combined all of the traditional stodginess of the conservative German school with the inhibitions of the Victorians. And, what could be better than that particular combination? I'm just kidding. It's nice music. It's just nice, charming music. And, he doesn't deserve to be completely waylaid, but he also doesn't deserve to have his name up there with Haydn and, Mozart and Beethoven and Bach and Handel and Mendelssohn and all those people. He did not. He was not such a big deal, but he was a little deal. And so a little deal who's worth at least 1 or 2 discs of stuff. You get his piano concertos, you can get this and maybe a disc of piano music, and you're all set for Edward MacDowell. He was very much inspired by nature, by romantic nature, sort of imagery, woods and horns in the distance, and birds and butterflies and flowers and that kind of stuff. And it's good. It's good. It's nice stuff. Anyway, this disc contains his 2 orchestral suites, as I said. Now, suite number 1, which is actually written before suite number 2, it's typical for the music business, has titles. They all have titles. They're little character pieces. It's only 20 minutes long. The titles are In a Haunted Forest, yes, Summer Idyll, In October, The Shepherdess's Song, and Forest Spirits. Ooh, spooky. Now, the Forest Spirits are just sort of do you notice when I did that? Ooh. That's the gong resonating with my ooh. That's cool. That worked really well. Anyway, the Forest Spirits are Mendelssohnian spirits, but none the worse for that. They're sort of Mendelssohnian spirits with a little bit more muscle to them. Only a little, but more muscle. Here is, for example, the Forest Spirits, the end of it. It shows that, say what you will about the guy, he had a sense of humor, and that matters a lot in music, as we all know. Here is the Forest Spirits. See? Not terribly spooky, but fun and light and gossamer and sort of magical. And the piccolo writing is really cool. And that's really, really good. Now, the second suite, despite MacDowell's avowed non-nationalism, is basically called the Indian Suite. Yes, isn't that what it's called? Yes, because it's based on Native American folk tunes. Hypocrite. He was a hypocrite. But these were written in the early 1890s, and it was only after Dvorak made his pronouncement that the horrifying possibility of Native American and African American music really became potentially real, that everybody freaked out. That's what really, really freaked him out. And MacDowell was one of the freakers. But the Indian Suite is lovely. The tunes are sort of kind of modal. They don't sound particularly ethnic the way he sets them, but you do get a love song, and the love song, whether it's based on an Indian melody or not, does have just an appropriate smidge of the frenzy of sex in it. It's a plausible love song. It has some passion there. Otherwise, why would we ever listen to it? Thank God it has some passion. And here is the passionate bit. Okay, so this is not exactly Tristan and Isolde, even though he studied with Liszt, even though he certainly hung out with people for whom passion was the natural mode of expression. He just wasn't exactly that excited about it, I guess. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is this disc, conducted by Takuo Yuasa, with the Ulster Orchestra on Naxos is lovely. It's lovely. It's inexpensive. It's sort of one of those things you really should have in your collection. And you may find yourself listening to it more often than not because it's just good music. Now, Hamlet and Ophelia was originally two separate pieces that he jammed together. So there's Hamlet and there's Ophelia. And they don't really get together very much. And because Hamlet, is the more exciting of the two, that's the first half is more interesting than the second half, which is kind of droopy. And you begin to realize that when MacDowell was trying to write larger forms, and Hamlet and Ophelia is not terribly large, it's 13 minutes long in this performance, he didn't really have the breadth to be able to sustain that. I mean, the two piano concertos are nicely shaped, and they're about as successful as he got in big forms. And that's because he had a solo on his own instrument that he could work with. And those are also really worth hearing. I would listen to those two piano concertos if I were you. You would enjoy them. And they're available in this series, by the way, on Naxos in very good performances. So, MacDowell is not entirely negligible. And I think it's just funny that nobody talks about him, but whenever we go to concerts in America's older concert halls, there he is, up there on the plaster trim, whatever they call that. It's not the proscenium. He never quite made it to the proscenium, but he usually gets stuffed somewhere over the right balcony, over on that side. You can see your MacDowell staring at us, and you can wonder, if you wonder, as I did, who the hell was Edward MacDowell? Here's your opportunity to figure it out. It just goes to show, well, I don't know what it goes to show. What it goes to show is that he wrote two pieces of orchestral music that are worth listening to. And that's enough for me, I have to say. So keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining me. Take care.